Hello, hello. This is my artifact episode number 4165, and this is my today's third artifact. I don't know why, but I'm kind of like a recording artifact. Like this is my third artifact. Okay, like usually I record artifact in the morning and in the night. Okay, but the problem is that na, ki, um, like a like basically I have kind of like a little bit of kind of like a something that ki whenever I ate my lunch or dinner, I need a walk. Okay, if I didn't really walk, it felt like my stomach is kind of like a burning from inside. So that's why I need a kind of like a walk. And what better way to kind of like make it walk much more better when you are kind of like a recording artifact. Okay, this is the reason number one. Reason number two is that ki rain. Yeah, I am kind of like at the rooftop holding umbrella, walking and recording artifact. Okay. Why? Because of that, as I mentioned, when I kind of like ate my lunch or dinner, I just can't kind of like a stay. I just need a walk. Okay, but because of rain and I cannot able to walk outside, so I have rooftop and I have this umbrella. So why not? So I'm kind of like doing it that. Okay, and reason number third is that I realized something that I'm kind of like a recording artifact, very productive artifact. Okay, what's the productive artifact? A productive artifact means like that ki, I don't know, right now I am in that particular zone where I'm thinking very broadly regarding about Adam, regarding about, I don't know, like basically is this thing na, like whatever the stuff that I'm saying, like my like today whatever the kind of like artifact that I recorded, which is kind of like a really valuable, I think, because it's not my kind of like a simply my other artifact where I kind of like a talk about something, but this is actually talk about kind of like a legit might gonna add value into the humanity and things and that something like that. So yeah, so these are kind of like a things. And fourth reason is that ki, like I don't really have anyone to talk. Okay, so that's why I'm actually talking in artifact. But it's not really that ki I just want to talk, that some kind of like a recording artifact. But still, it's just like that na ki, like basically is this thing, in this particular scenario I have two option. First option is that put the headphone inside and kind of like simply just listen the song and kind of like a went into that kind of like imaginary world and kind of like imagine every possible scenario and things and that. This is the kind of like a something I do while I was kind of like running and things and that. Or option number three, option number two is that he record artifact. So yeah, and it's not really that I record artifact is because of I don't really have anyone. I have kind of like a people to talk, but still I prefer to kind of like a talk with myself because I understand more. Yeah, I don't know how to supposed to explain, but I'm kind of like really enjoying to talking to recording artifact and things and that, and that's yeah, whatever. Okay, so let's just kind of like a jump into the question. All right, yeah. Okay, so question is, wait, where is the question? Okay, why would someone trust Adam? Oh, that's a really good question. Okay, first of all, what exactly is this question and why am I asking this question to myself? I wanted to build a AI that could predict the future. Okay. Now, before I wanted to build such a AI that could predict the future, I wanted to aware of all the possible consequences. Okay. So I went to ChatGPT. I tell them कि I wanted to build a AI that could predict the future. Before I wanted to build such a system or such a AI, I wanted to aware of all the possible consequences. So suggest me 100 question. ChatGPT kind of like a suggest me 100 question. This is one of those question. Now regarding about the question says that why would someone trust Adam? Okay, yeah. Now, basically, it's not really that people will not gonna trust Adam regarding about that does he kind of like a predict the future or not and things and that, or how much accurate does he predict the future and things and that. Okay. Basically, is this thing that trust means something else, something very differently. Okay, let me kind of like tell you something it's a kind of like a hypothesis or human behavior, what I kind of like experience something like that. So let me kind of like tell you. Okay, yeah. The who do we supposed to be trust is a kind of like a defined by how much influence that particular person we have. Okay, example. Okay, let me tell you something. So basically is this thing, let's just say I am kind of like showing a kind of like a application. Okay, this is kind of like application where is kind of like a somewhat something look like a Chinese Instagram. Okay, yeah. Now when you open that application, you kind of like see the Chinese font and things and that and that and that and that and that. Okay, yeah. Now ask me honestly this answer that would you upload your kind of like a photos on that particular platform? Obviously I'm not kind of like asking this question to the people who are kind of like a belong to the China. I'm asking to such a people who are kind of like always kind of like a use a app or any kind of like a simply user interface is in English language. Okay, yeah. And suddenly you kind of like see a interface in kind of like a Chinese language, then you are kind of like simply this thing that keep you might gonna access for a couple of time, but you might not gonna share your detail, you might not gonna log in through Google. Yeah, this will kind of like happen because you kind of like this is what it is. Okay, the trust factor is actually not only came from the people, but sometime it kind of like came from kind of like a simply text, font, colors, how it kind of like look like. Okay, now let's take a kind of like a somewhat something a kind of like a I don't know how do I supposed to explain. There are kind of like immature. Okay, let me kind of like tell you something regarding about immature. What's the immature? Immature means like that he not grown or maybe kind of like a little bit of fragile. Okay, have you ever kind of like noticed something immature piece of content? Like let's just say you are kind of like basically you are kind of like watching this kind of like watching this kind of like a video on YouTube platform. Okay, yeah. Now whatever the stuff that I'm saying is a kind of like a bitterly immature. Okay, yeah. My video is a kind of like you are kind of like seeing on YouTube platform or listening those thing on YouTube platform. It is kind of like a bitterly immature. Why? Because of that when I'm try to talk in Artifact, it's a kind of like a lot of I fumble a lot. There are kind of like so many repetition words and so many things that doesn't really make it kind of like some quality of product. Okay, and because of it doesn't really have that much kind of like some quality or maybe kind of like some presentation quality, so people don't really trust. Okay, so that's why you might kind of like watching this kind of like a video on YouTube platform only and only because of that you wanted to know me, you wanted to understand me, you wanted to research on me. And normal people will not gonna kind of like watch this video because I understand the YouTube algorithm. Okay, YouTube algorithm will kind of like simply represent this kind of like simply video to such a people who are kind of like really understand me and really wanted to know me and things, and that's why that is the only way that you are kind of like listening this right now. You will, if you are a normal person, definitely you will not gonna kind of like watch this kind of like a half an hour shit that I'm trying to talk. Okay, do you understand? So what I'm trying to tell you is this thing, like I purposefully kind of like make this my Artifact as kind of like a as much as mature and raw and things and that, and because Artifact is never meant to be kind of like a some filter, it always meant to be kind of like a raw and unmatured and things and that and that. Okay, and it always be okay. But do you understand is that he, because of its kind of like a raw and kind of like a things, we don't really kind of like trust, but somewhat somewhere we kind of like trust because like Artifact is a kind of like a bit more different. I'm not gonna talk about the Artifact. It's a kind of like a top, like Artifact is a kind of like okay. I don't know, sometimes like my question is about that ki how does kind of like a trust and how do we kind of like a trust other people? We actually trust other people or we actually trust other system or we actually trust other kind of like a some particular whatever it is, UI, product, people, location or whatever it is. Okay, according to the how much familiarity that we have or how much kind of like I know that particular have a kind of like a completely uncertain thing or completely unknown thing, we don't trust that thing. Okay, yeah. Like basically is this thing that if I kind of like put you in some sort of place that you never really been, you might kind of like somebody like scared because you don't really have any person to kind of like a trust, so that's why you are kind of like a bit really scared and things and that. Okay, so this is what it is. Like basically humans are kind of like always been kind of like a try to be kind of like a trust such a particular system or people or whatever it is regarding about familiarity or regarding about how much common that it has and things and that. Okay, yeah. Now I'm gonna ask this question. Okay, yeah. Does people trust the Adam? Well, basically, it's this thing that the people will kind of like trust it or not. I think that they will, and the reason is that because of some kind of like a recording artifact right now. What do you mean by that? Okay, so as I mentioned, is this thing that our trust is kind of like a built by familiarity or what we kind of like a somebody like a kind of like a somewhat something that we already knew it. Okay, yeah. Right now, Adam, I haven't really built it. I will kind of build this Adam maybe kind of like after maybe kind of like a 5 or 10 year after that. Okay, yeah. Now I'm not really sure about the exact timeline because Adam required a kind of like a lot of things. Okay, yeah, like a 5, 10 year or maybe 15 year. I'm not really sure about this particular stuff. Okay, yeah. But I'm kind of like a recording artifact, upload those artifact in YouTube platform. Basically, is this thing the entire blueprint of how do I supposed to build my AI and things and that, which is actually available on YouTube platform right now, and it will be always be there before even kind of like a build the Adam. So basically, is this thing I am building the publicity of building such a AI that could predict the future even before I build this thing. Like basically is this thing na, like right now these kind of like artifacts, some kind of like a recording are kind of like a somewhat something considered as a kind of like a trailer that that trailer for the movie that I will gonna make in the future. And because of I'm kind of like a make so many kind of like a so many mini trailers, like a thousands of mini trailers and things and which is always been there even before kind of like a before I build and things and also I also kind of like a put entire thing about me, like basically my entire life is actually kind of like something on the internet. Okay, so basically is this thing na ki whenever the people will find out, they will always knew about me, they will always kind of like know about me because I already kind of like put that much kind of like information. So even if whoever person you are, even if you're from India or kind of like a different part of the world or things and that, okay, yeah, you already knew me. Because let me tell you one thing, I'm not kind of like simply investing just a kind of like artifact. I'm investing my artifact and things with respect to time, because time is a kind of like simply things that I wanted to utilize. Because as I mentioned, if I'm kind of like a promoting my movie decade before the movie launch, then my movie will kind of like a somebody like a like basically like a earn a lot of amount of money or attention or things and that. Why? Because I invest not only just money but time too. Okay, yeah. And I invested almost like a 10 year 20 year of artifact. I already been things and so much, so many, like I'm kind of like a provide so much kind of like information that people might gonna get overwhelmed. And because of this thing na, people might not feel kind of like unfamiliarity. Like people always knew that ki how I've been through, what is actually my struggle, what is actually things that should happen, where I came from, things and that. Okay, yeah. I never really like because of like basically this thing na, humans are always being connected by humans, and because of I'm kind of like sharing that much information on the YouTube on this artifact and things and that, so people already been connected with me. Okay, and when they are connected with me, and when I kind of like create new product or things and that, indirectly they will kind of like a trust my kind of like a assembly product. And as also is this thing, Adam will only and only establish after the after the artifact will kind of like a successful. And artifact will kind of like get successful when people are kind of like a recording artifact, and the people who kind of like a recording artifact, only and only because of they might gonna feel really good. And they might gonna feel really good because of that they already knew that this particular person named Saurabh Authare, who kind of like get really so much amount of value that it get when he record the artifact. So probably I will might gonna get that through. So that's why they are kind of like a recording artifact. They will kind of like getting the value. They will kind of like recommend artifact to the other people. More publicity happen. Other people kind of like get that value. People are kind of like recommending soft publicity. People are kind of like recording artifact again and again and again and again. This cycle continue. and then almost like a rest of the every person on the planet are kind of like a recording artifact, and then I automatically kind of like a create the kind of like image inside of their heart, and because of they are kind of like a trusting me, so that's why when they are kind of like a trusting me, so whatever the kind of like a product that I make, like a movie or any kind of like a AI or things like that, and that they always kind of like a put the attention because I created that thing too. So yeah, so indirectly is this thing, the question is that he does people will kind of like a trust the Adam? Yeah, they will. But this is the kind of like a, there are two type of trust. One is a kind of like a trust that he kind of like a, I am actually creating this thing, so that's why people are kind of like a trusting. Okay, but there is also another kind of like a trust. What is another kind of like a trust? Is that key, how is exactly my AI can kind of like a predict as much as well as possible future. Like basically, like as I mentioned, the Adam kind of like a giving the possibility kind of like a something the prediction that 95% of prediction that this might gonna happen. But if such thing will not gonna happen, then in that scenario might be kind of like a people lost the trust because my performance or my kind of like AI performance or my AI does not predict that much well future. So basically, does people will kind of like a predict or not? Well, basically, future is kind of like unpredictable. It's not really that Adam will always kind of like a provide you kind of like all the details and things and that and that. It's not really that kind of like simply why the kind of like a some places thing you went to the supermarket, Adam kind of like a telling you that apple might be a kind of like a red, and you realize that apple there is no red, there is a kind of like a green apple. So you might think that oh, Adam is a kind of like a trust, like Adam is a kind of like a failure because he does not predict that much well. Well, let me tell you one thing is that now sometimes you have to kind of like put the effort too, because it's just like that. It's not kind of like Adam will kind of like a giving you direction, but you have to walk on that. Okay, yeah. And when you are kind of like a walking, there are kind of like a lot of things will kind of like unfamiliarity. You have to face that thing. Okay, yeah. The journey will not kind of like a become kind of like a something smooth because you knew it. No, you have to be walk on that. Like a walk, you have to walk on yourself, and that walk really required your effort. Okay, so that is what it is. Like basically, is this thing that Adam will try to make sure that as much as possible. I'm also saying this thing. Adam might gonna fail too. Adam might not gonna kind of like give you that much kind of like exact prediction model and things and that and that. But still, is this thing that you have to do your own research and things and that and that. Adam is a try to help you to kind of like make you better, make you do kind of like make you better decision regarding about what you wanted to do and things and that and that. It's not kind of like a give you kind of like a simply a ready-made thing in front of you and just kind of like a use it or throw it or whatever it is. No, it's not. Or like basically some people might gonna use it for that particular purpose too. But still, I didn't really build Adam for kind of like a such particular stuff. I built Adam for kind of like a utilize for right possible consequences. Building a policy or kind of like a simply the institutional thing or government thing or things and that to kind of like a make sure that mistakes should supposed to be happen before before it kind of like implement or things and that. So this is what it is. That's why I'm kind of like a things and that. Still, is this thing I'm gonna make sure that the Adam will kind of like a perform as much as better it possible. So yeah. All right. I have to bend here. Okay. It's been rain is kind of like a too much. All right. So this is it. This is it. And thank you.